When it comes to placing cornices for raking ceilings, we don't have a lot of choice when it comes to objects at the moment. We have three cornice objects. We've got our regular single cornice that you place on each side of a ceiling. That's the one that we have to use for raking ceilings. The freeform cornice, although it will allow us to stretch it around the room, it doesn't allow us to rake anything. So we can't angle the cornice up the ceiling for the raking gable, and we can't roll any particular side of the cornice to match our raking ceiling. The auto cornice, because it's an accessory and it's a slab accessory, it doesn't work with raking ceilings because that raking ceiling is a roof, and therefore the accessory just will not associate to the roof, so we can't use it. So we're stuck with our raking cornice. Now, a raking ceiling, when you look at it, is basically the same as a standard ceiling, flat ceiling, but you're literally just taking the whole thing and raking it. So we're raking the cornice up the gable wall, and we're also rolling this cornice in the side here. If you unrotated this, we've got a flat ceiling where all the cornices join. So it's as if you've taken this ceiling here and simply said, let's rotate from that point there and rotate it to our ceiling angle. Now you can see what happens is obviously the wall doesn't rotate, the wall would stay exactly where it is, and if the wall stayed where it was, there's now a gap. If we take a standard cornice and rotate it, we'll have a bit of a problem here with the gap. Now fortunately our standard cornice takes all that into consideration. We've got some options to rake and roll this cornice. If I take that cornice and I apply it to our ceiling, I go to my object tool, get my cornice, and instead of just placing the cornice, I'm going to rotate and stretch it at the same time, which means I need to work in an anti-clockwise direction. So there's my start point, there's my angle. I'll come across to here and click. I can click anywhere along that line, and then that's my end point. That end point is also the start point for my next cornice. This is my angle, and this is my end point. I'm just going to concentrate on this corner here. I'm not going to do the whole ceiling. I think you know how to do this anyway, but I'll just go through as a refresher. If I now select that and have a look at that in 3D, what we've got is a wall with a raking ceiling, and I've got a flat cornice. Now the first thing is my flat cornice does not sit under the ceiling properly, so I need to drag this. So I simply drag that from there up to that point there. So my cornice is now at the correct height. I can select this cornice here. I can go into the settings, and I can't actually do anything in this particular page, but if I go to my all parameters page, I've got some settings here for the mitre of the ends, which I haven't done yet, and I've also got the inclination of the cornice, which is the rake up the gable, and I've got the roll angle, which is allowing me to fit the side cornice into the angle of the ceiling. So my roof is 25.63 degrees, so you just need to type this in to match your ceiling or your roof angle, ceiling angle. If it goes the wrong way, you might just need to type in minus 25.63 degrees. So now I've got my cornice there, which is quite nice. I've got this cornice here, which again, I just need to roll this cornice to suit, because at the moment it doesn't match the ceiling, and it's not matching the width of this cornice that we just raked along the ceiling there. So again, I go into my settings, back to my all parameters, and this time I want the roll angle of 25.63 degrees. Again, you might need to put negative if it goes the wrong way. So you can see now that looks quite correct. There's an issue. This particular cove cornice does not really suit being used for a raking ceiling, because we've now got a bit of a gap at the bottom here which the plasterers would have to fill. You're much better off to use probably a different cornice. The One that works quite well is the Gyprock Classic Cornice. That's quite a nice one for raking ceilings. So if I go back to my floor plan here, we've still got the cornices in the right location. Now you can see that the ends don't mitre, so I'm going to grab this. I could do this in the parameters as well, but I'm just going to simply select this, and I'm going to mitre that cornice 45 degrees, and then I'm going to select this cornice, and I'm also going to mitre that 45 degrees. So in plan they look like they mitre quite well. Again, I'll go back to 3D, and you can see they don't actually mitre. The reason they don't mitre is, remember that we were dealing with flat cornices. So if I select these two cornices here, and I've omitted to say that when I rolled that cornice, the object is clever enough to know that it needs to join in close to the wall. So it rolls itself based on the insertion point. So it's clever enough to know it needs to roll up to the ceiling but also come across a bit to the wall. It will position itself properly there, but back to the mitre. So here you can see the corner mitre is not working. That's because the mitre that we have at the moment is set for a flat ceiling and it's perpendicular to the floor. So what I need to do is come into here and select this cornice here and have a look at it, and go into my all parameters, and what I need to do is to set the end so that it's not perpendicular to the floor, but I want it perpendicular to the cornice inclination. Now you need to be a little bit careful because this is a gable. One end is going to be vertical. I need that end to stay perpendicular to the floor. So it's a bit of a gamble as to which end is which. Just try one and see. It changed this end, it didn't change that end. If I change the other end, you'll see what will happen is the cornice becomes very short and is not correct because something is going wrong with the cutting planes. So as I say, we need this one to remain vertical anyway, perpendicular to the floor. So that was the correct end, so I can say OK to that. Fixes that cornice up. I need to select the other cornice here. Do the same thing, come into here, all parameters. Now, I haven't done the entire cornice around the room, but it would be both ends of this one need to be perpendicular. And because it's flat, both ends perpendicular to the inclination is exactly what we want to do. And what you'll find now is that this cornice will now mitre perfectly at the corner, exactly as you would expect it to do. So it's literally what we've done is taken that flat ceiling, that flat cornice, and rotated the whole thing up to suit the roof. Now, using individual cornices, that's quite a tedious task. That's why I've only shown you just those two corners there. I haven't gone around the entire room. You can imagine if you had a much bigger room, you'd have a lot more cornices. And it's quite a tedious task, as I say, to do that. So, what's our alternatives? Well, let's get rid of those objects. So we can do it that way. But another option we've got is the beam tool. And with the beam, if you remember, the beam tool can also be inclined and it can also roll. So it can do exactly the same as our cornice. And what you'll find is a little bit more user-friendly in that it will trim the corners automatically for us. So I can come into my beam tool, I select my beam, I come into here and I say I want a complex profile beam. What complex profile do I want? Here I'll show you with the Gyprock Classic one, but I've got the complex profiles saved for a few different cornices here. So if you need a different profile, you need to create that cornice in the profile manager, and when you do create that cornice in the profile manager, what you need to do is to come into here, and if I choose one of those cornices and go into edit, you will see the cornice that you need to create is located on the lower left hand corner of the origin. So there's our origin, the cornice must be in the lower left hand corner. You need it in that position there so that it works well with all of the tools that we're going to use it with. In that, as I said before, it's best if you work in an anti-clockwise direction, and if you put it in this quadrant here, it will work best when you work in an anti-clockwise direction. how to create the cornice is all described in another video about complex profiles for cornices, so I won't go into explaining what all of this is there, so just watch that other video. I'll put the link to that video in the description of this video. So we've got our complex profile, we've got our beam tool, we tell it we want the particular complex profile that we want, so I'll go back to the classic one, and basically it's a case of, again, just placing the cornices and then fixing them up. I could do all this in 3D actually. I could place them in 3D and snap them to the correct angles and stuff straight away, but it's just as easy to just place them. Again, I'll just work on this corner because it's just a small section that we need to demonstrate. Again, they've come in at a level that is not suitable, so I just need to select this, drag the whole lot up to the level that I want it to be. Because these are beams, now that I've got this end at the right level, I can simply grab this end here, come into my beam tool and say I want to modify the angle, and what do I want to do? I want to match that ceiling. So you can see it's very easy to change the angle of the beam. It's quite easy to do that. Now this beam here, as with the other example that I just showed you with the cornice, we need to rotate this cornice to sit and match that profile on the other side. So I can come into here and I can start to rotate this cornice. Now I've just got to watch where it is, and you can see here I can actually match the ceiling. If I've got the ceiling there, 25.63 degrees, or in this case negative 25.63 degrees. So I can simply match that ceiling, which is perfectly valid. I can do that. I could also go into the tool settings, or I could actually come in here into the info box and adjust the roll angle. But you can see here it's not 25.63 degrees, it's 360 less 25.63 degrees. Or you can go into the beam settings, and there's again the roll angle. So yes, the roll angle again there you'd have to type in. So we've got our cornice rotated at the correct angle, but as you can see we've got a problem now in that the cornice is pulled away from the wall. So with the cornice object, it's clever enough to know that when you roll it that it still needs to move across to match the wall, but because this is a simple beam, it's not clever enough to know that. So what I would do is throw a dummy section through the ceiling and the cornice, and we'll open that up and we'll see exactly what the problem is. Now the temptation is to simply grab all of this cornice and simply just drag it from there to there and drag it down, but the problem is when you drag that down you're also dragging the other end of the cornice, so you'd have to fix that end up. So it's not worth doing that. Don't grab all of the cornices, just grab that single one. Now although the complex profile shows all nice and curved and smooth, when you use it as a beam it will segment. So it will show with various flat segments representing the curve. It's not as nice as using the objects, so the objects are much smoother. The quality is a little bit less with this. There's nothing we can do about that. That's just the way that the complex profiles work with beams and walls. So what we've got to do is we've got to move this cornice across or down on the same angle until it touches the wall. The closest point for this particular cornice is that corner, so it's that corner there that I want to come down and touch this wall. I don't want to necessarily drag that point down. If you did drag that point down, that would be perfectly fine. I don't think anyone's going to notice, but we'll be a little bit pedantic here. Now I can just grab this cornice and I can start to say I want to drag it from that point. What I've got to do is I've got to establish that angle, and yes, I know it's 25.63 degrees, but all I've got to do is just go and touch one of these angled lines that's the right angle that I want, get the blue guideline come up. I've now got the extension to that, and if you look closely I've now got a parallel guideline to match that. So I just need to move that down and drag that down until that parallel guideline touches that wall, say OK, and now the cornice is now in exactly the right location that I want. So we've got that all fixed up. Now the other problem is the corner. Now that we've dragged that cornice, when we look at this, when I select this, this cornice now has moved. So in plan it looks incorrect. Well, it's not really incorrect. It's the axis line is this point here. So for this cornice, the axis line is going through here. So we've moved that. The cornice is literally that deep now because it's on an angle. Remember, we've rolled it to suit the angle of the ceiling. But because we've moved it across, the axis line has come across to here. This cornice here, the axis line is still there. So I need to grab this cornice and I've got to make sure that I stretch along the angle. I don't want to change the angle and I don't want to drag the cornice. I need to stretch it along the length of the axis. So I need to stretch it from there and basically just find where that other one was, which was there. And when I do that, now these two corners are touching, or the two reference lines are merging. When I look at that in 3D, what you'll find is the mitre will have now fixed itself up. So everything miters exactly as it should. So if I spin that right around the other side and we have a look at that, you can see everything is mitering up quite nicely. So with the beams, you'll find it's a little bit easier than with the cornice tool, so you don't have to worry about which end is which and this end is straight and all that sort of stuff. So two beams that touch each other, the corners will miter. It doesn't matter if the beams are on different angles, different rolls. As soon as the reference lines touch, it will miter. So that's quite a nice way of doing it as well. So it's possible to do that all with beams. One other option that I will show you is using the railing tool, which seems a bit counterintuitive. You think the railing is a railing, but it's actually a profile extruded along a path. So it's exactly what we want. If I go to my railing tool, by default, we've got things like balusters and glass rails and all that sort of thing. So if I look at this particular railing, it's a proper railing. So it's going to be a proper railing with top rails, mid rails, balusters, posts, all that sort of stuff. We're not interested in any of that. So we can go through and change all these settings and basically end up with just a single rail. Now, I've set up a favourite. So if you go into the favourites, go back to the railing section and you go into the favourites. I've set up a favourite here. You can't see it very well. The colour's not particularly good, but it's a Cornice custom profile cove of 90mm. Now that, if I apply that favourite, when I go back to the segments, you can see all of the railing and everything is gone. So all the balusters, the posts, the handrails, they've all gone. All I'm left with is a single rail sitting down at the floor level, which is our cornice. And if you look at it, it's a profiled railing. So I'm using a profile, and the profile I'm using is the cornice. I can use any cornice I like. I'll use the Alto this time. Now, that's an interesting one. If you look, I don't have the classic cornice in here. That's because it hasn't been allocated the railing type. So if I just quickly go back out of here into my profiles, if I go and grab the classic, you can see here that if I go into the edit mode, you'll see a little bit better. It's set up to be used as a beam and an object. It's not set up as a railing, so I need to set it as a railing. Save. Now when I go back to my railing tool and I go into the settings and I go and pick my favourites again. Sorry, I go back to the railing and pick my favourite. When it comes to the rails, that I've got there. I've got just a single rail now, and I've got my cove, my alto, and I've now got the classic, so I can choose the classic. Now, the favourite is great because it sets everything up for you. So you've got the favourites down here, which you can import the favourites. If you look at the JWH ArchiCAD YouTube channel, there's a video in there that explains how to import favourites. You're just going to import, and you want to import a PLN. The best place is to import the PLN file. Go and search, change this to a PLN file type, search for the PLN file, open that. The best thing to do is to select all of the favourites, which they're selected all by default anyway. Select all of them and delete all before import. That just means that it clears out everything that's in here and imports everything that was in the 25 template, which is exactly probably what you want. If you've created your own favourites, maybe you don't want to do that. So now we have our favourite for the cornice. I will just quickly show you, if I select a regular railing, what it is you need to change to make the cornice work. Basically, we've got the railing settings. You don't need to worry too much about this. The height should be 0, but that will change when you actually place the railing, so that's not important. What we're looking at is the segment, and it's easy just to, it's all graphical, so we can just grab this top rail here, and you can see it's changed to top rails, and all I have to do is say delete or negative, and it deletes that railing out. Grab this top rail here, same thing, it's changed to rails, and I want to delete that off. Grab the balusters, it's changed to balusters, I want to delete that. You can see basically what I'm doing is I'm just deleting everything. My inner posts, I need to delete those. What I'm left with is basically one rail. One rail, and I'm actually left with posts at the end, which are these nodes, which you can't actually see them in this graphical interface. I'm not really sure why not, but we've got nodes which are the ends of the railings that we place at the end of the segments. And if I look at this, the posts for these railings, I've actually got railing posts at the moment. I can just come in here and say none. So I've now got no posts that I need to worry about. All I've got is this one rail. Now the railing at the moment is sitting at 100 high. I just want that to sit at 0. And I don't want a rail as in the rail 25, I want the profiled rail. And what profile do I want? I want any one of these profiles, in this case one of the cornices, so the Gyprock Classic we'll choose. And that's basically it. I don't want fixings for it because I don't need to fix the railing as a cornice, so I don't need any fixings. If I keep going through back to the nodes, at every node or every corner, the end of every segment, we've got the post which we've just turned off. We've got connections. Now we want to make sure that it's a what they call a direct connection. So we don't want the disconnected one, we don't want the gooseneck, we want the direct connection, so it's a direct connection between each corner. And it's not the top rail we're interested in, or the handrail 1 or 2, it's the railing. And it's the railing must be a direct connection, which it is. And the ends, again, I'm not interested in the top rail, the handrail, handrail 2. I'm interested in the railings, and the railings, I want them to be a vertical end. Now that's important, not so much for the corners, but the two endpoints. There's always two endpoints to a railing. Even an enclosed shape like a room, there's always going to be two endpoints. And I'll show you that in a moment, but it's important that these are set to vertical, and we don't want any length on that endpoint. The connections, there's no length to worry about there. There's one other in the node. This is it. The node, we've got the end post sitting 25mm outside of our stair at the moment, which we're obviously not using stairs, but we don't want that railing at 25mm. It will add a 25mm extension, so we just want 0 extension onto that. So that sets everything up. The segment height, which is a metre, you don't have to worry about. There's a couple of other things that we need to watch in here. So railing, the floor plan display. We've got the railing on different stories. If you don't change any of this, what you'll find is that you might not see the railing on the plan that we're looking at. So it's important to just go through every one of these, just set it to no break mark and make it visible. So no break mark, visible. No break mark, visible. At the moment it's got a hidden visible, hidden type. So if it's not the correct height, because it's all related to your floor plan cut plane height, if it's not the correct height you may or may not see it. So no break mark, visible, and the last one, no break mark, visible. And here the floor plan components, by model view options. If you leave this on, you'll find that the railings do not show, so you need to turn that off and make sure that the railings is ticked. So the model view options is set like this, with the railings turned off. We want to bypass the model view options but turn the railings on. So if you can remember all that, great. Otherwise, as I say, I've set up a favourite, so make sure that you load the correct favourites. Just come in here, double click that favourite. It will set everything up exactly as I've just explained it. Now, railings are associative to whatever you're clicking on, and it could be a mesh, it could be a wall, it could be a roof, it could be a slab. In this case it's the roof. So let's get rid of whatever that is there. We've got our railing tool. It's all set up exactly as we want to do, and all we need to do probably is change the layer for ceilings, which I'll make sure that the favourite is set that way if it's not. Again, work around in an anti-clockwise direction. Now this is an entire raking ceiling. I'll do the whole thing. There's two ways to place this railing. You can cheat a little bit and you can use a magic wand, but you can see the magic wand will only go around one part of the ceiling if you've got a double rake. So that's fine, we can place it and we can edit it. The trick is that when you use the magic wand, go close to the node that you want to start and stop at. So it could be that one, it could be this one. I'm going to start and stop deliberately at the apex of the roof, at the ridge. The reason being is the railing, when it goes around the room, has to have a start and a stop point. If I start and stop in a corner, they will not mitre, because it's a right angle end, if you like. You can't mitre the ends of a railing. So don't start in a corner, start at a gable or the ridge. If you can't do that, start halfway along one of the walls. It's just that wherever you start and stop, you're actually going to see a join line. So that's why the ridge is quite a good spot to do it, because you'll just get a vertical join line. Now I can use my magic wand, or I can simply go around and start from either one of these edges and work my way around anti-clockwise and just go around the whole thing. I'll just do a magic wand. That's what I mean by the start and end points. There's always going to be a start and stop. All I need to do now is to grab that object, and it's just like any sort of perimeter. I can add nodes, and I want to add a node to there, and I want to add a node down to this corner here. And that's now simply stretched my railing around. It starts here and goes anti-clockwise and it ends at the same spot. Being that it's all associative, when I look at this now in 3D, what you'll find, try that again. When I look at this in 3D, it's gone like that. Now, the reason it's done that is because I wasn't watching what I did, and by stretching that node to there, it stretched it and it's associated to the bottom of the wall, which is not a good thing. It's not a big issue because I can simply just grab this, and I don't want to drag the entire railing, I want to just move a node. What node do I want to move? I want to move it in that direction there up to the ceiling. Now I actually want the top of the ceiling at the moment. I'll explain that in just a moment. So I can drag to the top of the ceiling, and if you look carefully it will associate by default to the top of the ceiling anyway, which is not exactly what we want, but that's good enough for now. And you can see here it's placed it. When I was dragging that around, I'll just undo that and I'll show you what I should have watched out for. when I said to drag this node here, and I drag that node, if I pause for a little time, it's telling me it's dragging it to the wall, and it's showing me that the wall is what it's going to associate to. I don't want the wall. All I've got to do is make sure that I go to that node and press tab, and now it's gone roof. And because it's associated to the roof, you should find this one will automatically associate to the, oh no, it's gone to the wall. So I just say roof. So tab to go to the roof. Again, look at that in 3D. And now I won't need to adjust anything because it's associated to the correct things. The other thing is make sure you turn the wall layers off and just work with the ceilings. Then it has to associate to the ceiling. Now, all looks pretty good, except we've got the same problem here that we had before, where the cornice is not, this edge one is not rolling. It's picking up the rake of the wall automatically, so it knows that it's raking up the ceiling there, up the gable, but this edge here is not. I can adjust each one of these separately. I've got what they call edit mode. So I've got the whole railing selected. I go into edit mode. I can select just that cornice, and I also happen to want this one here as well. So I add that to my selection set. So I've got the two cornices. Now I can't graphically change anything here. I've got to go into the railing settings because again it's nothing graphical and there's nothing actually in the info box here. But if I look at here, there's a roll angle. Now 25.63 degrees is our ceiling rake. I probably need negative. I'm just going to leave it at that for now and just see what happens. And you can see, yeah, it's exactly what I thought. So what I need to do is actually type in negative 25.63 degrees. So if you see it was wrong, you just change it. You can see I've changed that. It's also fixed up that end as well. So that's all well and good. It's now fixed up the corner mitre, but we've got the same problem in that it doesn't match the wall. It's too short again. I'll just exit the edit mode. I can't drag anything because if I drag this end down, it's going to affect that end there, and it's also going to drag this end further away. So I can't drag the entire cornice or a part of it. I need to stretch just individual nodes. Let's go back to our section X. This time we've now got our cornice here. Don't worry that it's above the ceiling at the moment. That's fine. It's just because it's associated. And while we're playing around stretching things, it's going to keep associating to the top surface of that ceiling. So it's not until right at the end that we need to drop it down. If you drop it down now and you start playing with it, it will reassociate to the top and you'll get skew with cornices because one part will be down at the bottom and another part will be associated to the top, and it will just look wrong and you'll have to adjust it, which is easy. Just adjust it node by node. We've got this problem here. Now, unlike the beam profile, you can see this is segmented, but it's much smoother. It's much nicer than the beam was. But the problem we've got is that I can't just drag this particular cornice. I can go into edit mode and I can select that particular cornice, but I can't just drag this cornice down to where I want it to go. It's actually these nodes here that I need to stretch to adjust the cornice. So again, I'm going to exit edit mode. It's the point closest to there. So if I just draw a line and I drag that out, you can see here it's one of these nodes here. So either one would be quite fine. You'll find it's actually that top one there that's actually that slight a little bit closer, but I don't think anyone's going to notice anything. So it's this one here that I need to get. Sometimes you'll get the node like that. You will see the little tick to say there's your node and you can select it. Sometimes you can't and you need to just go here and activate the guideline there, activate the guideline on that edge, and then you'll get a node that you can select. Now the problem is, as I say, it's not this point that we need to stretch, it's this selection node. So it's actually this node here. So I've got to do like a relative stretch. So I've got to move that point from there to there by that distance from there to there. The easiest way to do that, I've found, is to just go to your circle tool, and I need to let go of my cornice, go to my circle tool, just make sure I'm doing a circle with a radius. That's the node that I'm interested in. Now again, I need to find that point over here, but I don't know what the angle is. Just go and touch this bottom of the cornice. That gives me a guideline. There's my guideline there, and if I look here, I've got my parallel guideline. So that point there is my radius, and I'll just complete the circle. I now take that circle, drag it from that point there to where I know the node currently is. What that allows me to do now is I can now grab my cornice, and I can grab this node, and I can simply say I want to move that node, and where do I want to move that node. And if I drag down here, because this is already the reference line, what you should find is you'll get the guideline that's in line with that reference line, and I want to drag to that circle. Alternatively, I could have just drawn a line from there to there and dragged the line up to here and then just drag to the end of the line. Now that's moved one node, that's one end of the cornice. You can see one end of the cornice is gone. So even though I'm cutting halfway through the length of this cornice or this ceiling, it's dragged the end node. It knows where the end node is. And I just need to do exactly the same to the other node, and I just need to drag that down. And you can see now exactly what it's done is it's moved relatively and dragged that. And because it's all linked together, it's all one railing, the whole thing has moved. So all I need to do now is to grab that circle and drag a copy of it, or drag it to the other side to where I know the node is. Grab my ceiling, grab that node, stretch, follow the guideline, I'll zoom in a bit, follow that guideline to where it meets and intersects with the circle, grab the second node and drag that down, and Bob's your uncle, it's now in place. Now is when you now go and grab this cornice and you simply drag it from that point there to that point there. When you do that, you watch this associativity, it will all break and it will become static. That means it's no longer associated to the ceiling. So if I adjust the ceiling, the cornice will not adjust, or the railing will not adjust, which is not a bad thing. You can see here it's covered up half the wall. Now remember, you won't show this in plan, so it's not a problem. If it is, you could probably send it to the back and you'll now see the wall. That's using the railing tool, which is quite good. So if I select the roof and I edit this roof so that I've got a little kick out, I'll select the other roof or ceiling and I add a node there. And I stretch that out to be exactly the same as that one. You can see here the railing hasn't followed, but what's really cool about this is I can now just grab this railing and say, look, add a node at that point there. Now that reassociates it, so it's become associative again. What I need to do is I need to drag that node up to there. This node I want to keep, but move it to that point. This one I want to add a new node at the corner, and this one I want to add a new node at this corner here. And if I now look at that section again, so my section here should stay exactly as it was. That's fine, because I haven't touched any of that. But you can see here we've got a problem, and you can see this is what I mean by being associative. It's now the nodes are at the top of the ceiling again, whereas here the nodes are at the bottom of the ceiling. So don't worry about it too much, not a big deal. I'm just going to grab that section line because it's going to be easier if I drag that section line up to that point there, and then I open the section, because then I'm going to see as if it was just a smaller roof that I had before, so I can see the problems a little bit clearer. So there's my ceilings. The first thing to do, go into edit mode, grab that cornice there, grab that cornice there, go into my settings, and remember it was minus 25.63 degrees. That fixed that up, no problem. We've got the same issue in that I need to drag that down. Now, if I was clever, when I had the section back before, I would have just grabbed that circle. Actually, that circle should still be there. Let's just go back out of edit mode now. Go back to my section. That circle is still there from before. So what that allows me to do is make sure I grab just the circle, move the circle. Now I've got to remember that the nodes are at the top of the ceiling. Either that, so I can put it there and I can stretch my nodes and then I need to drag them down, or I can put it there and what I need to do is when I select my ceiling, I need to drag that node from there down, and you can see dragging the node doesn't affect the other end, so this end stays perfectly where it was. So all I'm doing is dragging that node down to the bottom, and I also need to drag the other end, because remember there's two ends to every cornice. I need to drag that down as well, and now that I've got it dragged down, I can drag that node back to where they intersect, and I can drag that node back to where they intersect. I could probably have actually just gone straight from there to there. Grab my circle, copy it from there, or drag it from there, across to the other side. I want it to go there. Grab my cornice, and remember that that's the top. I need to drag it down to there, and then I need to drag it to here. So I'm going to try it all in one go and see what it does. And I need to drag that one from there to there, all in one go. And there you go, lo and behold. And the only other one I need to fix up now is make sure that I drag that node down, and all done. So with a little bit of messing around, let's grab this and look at it in 3D. You've now got a cornice. All the corners will mitre automatically. Brilliant. Doesn't matter what angle they are at, they will mitre. So long as you match the rake and the roll to the ceiling angle, or the rake is automatic because you just drag the nodes, but change the roll angle to match the ceiling angle. So long as that matches exactly, you'll get a perfect mitre in all the corners. And as I say, it's not associated anymore, so if you do amend the ceiling shape, you have to manually adjust it, and then just make sure you drop the nodes down from the top to bottom. You can do the same thing in here. I could have done that in 3D. You can see now that the cornice line, well, because I've stretched it out, but the cornice line, the reference line, is now at the bottom of the slab. So all these nodes, you can just grab them and stretch them to match in 3D as well. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, a little bit of experimenting, but you can see you've got quite a nice raking ceiling. So the railing tool is actually quite handy for raking ceilings as well. So our options are the old cornice, single cornice where you place on each edge of the ceiling, adjust the rake angles, adjust the rolls, adjust the mitres, or the beam tool, which is a little bit quicker in that it does the corner mitres and stuff for you automatically. We just need to drag it across to match the wall when we change the roll angle. Or the railing tool, which is quite a handy one to do as well. So it's good in the fact that it's one continuous cornice, and if you need to adjust it, you can simply just drag nodes and add nodes to it. That's our start and end. So if I drag that out, you see it's literally just the start and end of the cornice, so it's important that stays there. When I drag that back now, you see it's become associative. So let's look at that back in 3D, and what you'll find is, so that's just something you need to keep an eye on. It was this end here that I dragged around, and you can see exactly what's happened now is that that cornice has now associated. Unfortunately, you can't tell it not to associate. You have to simply drag that node and drag the node and do that. I say that forces it to unassociate. Because I've dragged it vertically onto itself, it's going to actually say no. Because I've dragged it to there, it's actually automatically going to associate to that point. What I need to do is I need to drag it vertical, lock it with the shift key, and then link it to something else that's the same height. Oops, I missed. Try that again. So drag that node, lock it vertical, but lock it to that height, and you can see that if I'm careful and not move my mouse keeps moving, and I lock it to that height, it locks to that height. If you drag it onto it, basically above it's like in a vertical line, and link it to itself, it won't unassociate, it just reassociates back to that point. So that's something to watch out for. Same when you're doing this. If you were to drag it from this node down to that node, it won't work. You have to drag it from this node vertical to this node here for it to unassociate. You can select these at any time and you can tell it to unassociate, but it will just reassociate again. So a little bit annoying. There's your railing cornice.